First of all, allow me to introduce you to Princess Alexandra, the Honorable Lady Ogilvy. She's 86 years young, and she's a granddaughter of King George V. Now, throughout her almost 7-decade career of wearing beautiful hats for a living as a working member of the royal family, now she's been sent off to do more second and third, fourth string events than Sarah, the Duchess of Ferguson in the 80s, when she was in the doghouse. Right now, Alexandra is 56th in line to the throne, and tonight, as the world watches King Charles become an anointed monarch, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, is going to be watching his father make history right there beside her. Humiliating, shameful. If this wasn't bad enough, Harry having to sit beside somebody like Alexandra, who, by all accounts, is not very relevant when it comes to the monarchy. But get ready, because they're all going to be sitting for the ceremony in the third row. No, not the first row, not the second row, but the third row, number 3. This is a whole new level of humiliation for Harry. And this is a man whose penis has ended up in newspaper headlines on more than one occasion, so that's really saying something. When Harry and Meghan showed up for Her Late Majesty's Platinum Jubilee service of Thanksgiving in June of last year, they made the journey up the aisle of St. Paul's, and then they took their places in the second row. And people were shocked. I mean, for months and weeks afterwards, people couldn't stop talking about how humiliating the whole thing was for them. So when the late Queen passed away back in September, Meghan and Harry were again put in the second row for her funeral. They were forced to watch on from behind an 87-year-old Duke and a 14-year-old Viscount. So were they mortified? Were they embarrassed? Well, certainly. Each of these examples read like a very clear and deliberate put-down of a couple who decided to toss off the royal yoke and then make tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars whining to everybody about why exactly they had to run away from the royal family. So in the lead up to the coronation, of course, everybody was talking about who was going to be seated where. And now, thanks to The Sun, we know that at an event where Harry arguably should get a good seat because it is his father's big day, he has been lumped with the worst one yet. An insider spoke with the paper saying there were discussions that the seating could be arranged on the line of succession. Instead, the decision was to working royals only at the front and work back from there. Harry will be a long way from his father. I know this has to be painful for Harry. I mean, I would almost feel sorry for him if I didn't know all the horrible things that he did. But anyway, going into the coronation, there had been a good possibility that Charles would use this occasion to offer some kind of olive branch to Harry. That maybe the king would use this as an opportunity to send some kind of signal to Harry that in spite of everything that has happened, he still loves him. It would have been touching, it would have been sweet, and it would have been in line with a man who likes to talk to his plans. And there is a strong argument to be made that this would have been a more intelligent thing to do in the long run, that it would have mollified the upset Sussexes, and perhaps it would have made them dial down their crazy levels of indignation. But it's not looking like Harry can expect any olive branch today, because not only is he going to have to get there with all the other extraneous HRHs and Windsor cousins, and just sit there and wait for his brother and sister-in-law William and Catherine to show up, and not only is he going to have to sit there and watch the entire ceremony lost in the wilds of the third row, but he's also about to have to pay a very public price for the campaign that he has been waging against his own family. Meanwhile, billions of people all around the world are going to be watching from their televisions. So it looks like Harry is going to have to finally face some consequences. I mean, these are the consequences of having accepted a reported $148 million deal from Netflix, the crowning jewel of which was 6 hours of Harry and Meghan just whining about how horrible his family is. And it's time to face the consequences of that stupid book that he wrote. I mean, he put his often emotionally constipated, dysfunctional family on trial, and at the same time, he displayed such a lack of self-awareness, I was amazed. So what this demotion of Harry to the third row really tells us is just how badly Harry hurt his own father. I think the king has made it very clear that he is not amused and he didn't appreciate everything Harry did. After the Jubilee and after Her Late Majesty's funeral last year, Meghan and Harry being seated in the second row, and also the insanity that started, Charles cannot for a moment have been ignorant of how big a deal today's third row banishment really is. I mean, it's hard to view this decision to exile Harry to this royal Siberia as anything but a put-down. I mean, it's basically like being sent to the tower without any dessert. In another world where things worked out differently and Meg's it never occurred, Harry and Meghan, I think today, would be taking their places right there in the front row, and Harry also may have been given an official part to play in the proceedings. And in this different world, alright, let's say that Archofficial is real. Well, he probably also would have been dragged along to put up with a 2-hour church service. I mean, he would have been the same age as Charles was when he glumly sat through his mother's coronation back in 1953. And it would have been such an amazing celebration featuring a family that was united. But that's not what we're going to get tonight. Tonight, it's going to be difficult to not see a display of a family that's had quite the falling out. So while Harry watches on, sitting next to Alexandra as she's rustling around her handbag for some toffee, not only is he going to have to put up with seeing his brother deliver the homage of royal blood, but he's also going to have to watch Queen Camilla's grandchildren and great-nephews slapped front and center, where he should be. The way things are looking now, the coronation is going to be quite the event. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be quite the feat for Harry. I mean, it's basically going to be like Harry trying to conquer Everest. The coronation was never going to be an easy time for Harry, and this morning it just got a lot more difficult with this news about the seating. In 1821, after his coronation, King George IV talked about the ceremony and he said, "I would not endure again the sufferings of that day for another kingdom." And in the not-too-distant future, Harry may be about to feel pretty much the same.